Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Um, Before we start the explanation, let me introduce myself. And my name is Maulana Izzul, and I want to tell about the philosophy of reference. In Pragmatic, the act by which a speaker or writer use language to enable a hearer or reader to identify something, that's called reference. The referring expression actually provides a range of reference, and that is a number of possible reference. And you can see at the slide, there are some pragmatic approaches to the type of reference shift that occurs in the index as used in the pragmatic section. For the example, like written notes and answering machine messages and many more. And then after that we can proceed the pragmatic in two steps. For the example, first I set the stage by pointing out that the arguments against the pragmatic approach put forward in the recent literary file and something like that. And the second step is I took the first steps of implementing this approach and then sketching a pragmatic theory of references. So we can see a pragmatic theory in the reference, and then it can showing how it could handle the relevant cases. So after we process these two steps, we can we could handle some cases in this page. So we go to the next slide. Will the immediate scope of this paper is limited to indexial and referential reference, and the discussion is limited to range of specific theories and cases. After all, from the conclusion of that, we can conclude that drones are important for the evolution of pragmatic explanation in philosophy more generally. So this is an important cases we can watch it. When this method is limited, we can solve this problem using evaluating this method, this philosophy in more generally. Let's go to the next slide. The next point is reference and indexical expression. As you can see at this slide, an indexical is roughly speaking a linguistic expression whose reference can shift from context to context. For the example, the indexical, you may refer to one person in one context and to another person in another context. For example, like there are two speakers who utter a single sentence that contains an indexical might say different thing and different knowledge. In semantic, linguistic, and anthropology of philosophy of language, indexically is the phenomenon of a sign pointing to or indexing some object in the context and which it occurs. A sign that signifies indexically is called an index, or in philosophy is an indexical. So in this method, and this called index or indexical, this method. And then we go to the next part. For the example, I am 6 feet tall. The meaning 6 feet tall is given by what the individual words mean, and any competent user of English will understand them and indicating a certain height of the person uttering words. And we go to the next slide. Pragmatic function of indexical. In the pragmatic and other branches of linguistics and philosophy, Indexicality encompasses the feature of a language that refer directly to the circumstances or context in which an utterance takes place. Words and expressions in language often derive some part of their referential meaning from indexicality. For the example, I indexically refers to the entity that is speaking now. You can see the example at the slide. You can read the example, and I think that's enough for me. And the next slide will be explained by my friend.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Renandy Mevian, and I will presenting you about the exist to Anaphora, what is implication and implicators. So the first one is the cases discussed at the end of the previous section point up to the need of referring to the context in order to establish the proper reference for dietic terms such as next or last. And the same happens with the other dietic expression. The reference cannot be identified unless we have a certain minimal context including the current of the view. For the example, I need a box this big. So the reference is to a certain movement to the hands and arms indicating the desired size of the box. Usually this presupposes that one can see the speaker and identify his or her movement. Second, I met this girl other days. The demonstrative pronouns of Latin exhibit a similar character. On the other hand, they serve to indicate the dimension and distance of speaker space. On the other, they indicate speaker evaluation. The last is, he's been to the Italy many times, but he still doesn't speak the language, or the man who gave his paycheck to his wife was wiser than the man who gave it to the mistress. So we understand that the anaphora to cover reference that aren't really there. The language does not refer to any language that has been mentioned previously. However, we need understand it immediately as the language of Italy, since Italy has been mentioned. Next, to introduction, what is the implicator? The word implicator is derived from the verb to imply, as it is cognate implication. Etymologically, to imply means to fold, hence that which is implied is folded in and has to be unfolded in order to be understood. A conversational implicator is therefore something which is implied in conversation. That is something which is the left implied in actual language use. Move to implication and implicators. The use of the term implication are as discussed from implicator usually indicates a rather narrowly defined logical relationship between two propositions. Let this proposition be symbolized as P and Q. Then the logical implication is the relation if P then Q. Now P, Q. If then relationships are well known as in daily life and can be expressed in every language. Example, you cut my hair be symbolized by P and I'll take you out to dinner by key, then logically expression P key will stand for. Thank you.
My name is Rahma Fitriyani. I would like to continue the explanation about reference and anaphora. Okay, my part is about conversational and confessional implicators. Implicators is divided into two. The first is conversational and the second is conventional. Okay, the conversational implicators is also divided into two. They are particularists and the second is generalist. In generalist, they are indefinite and scalar. Okay, I'm going to explain them one by one. The first is conversational implicators. Conversational implicatures are the assumptions suggested by the speaker and inferred by the hearer in exchange situation. These assumptions are not encoded in the word side but are generated by the interlocutor's cooperation to achieve rational communication. Okay, between the speaker and the hearer, there is a cooperation, and in cooperation there is a cooperative principle. What is cooperative principle? Cooperative principle is a term for principles that guide our conversation. Greece called these rules maxims of conversation. The maxims are: the first is the quality maxim, or we call it as truthfulness. And the second is the quantity maxim, or informativeness. And the third is the relevant maxims, and the last one is the manner maxim. And then the next is about conversational implicatures, which is particulars. Particulars conversational implicatures are the inference which are worked out while the drawing totally on the specific context of the utterance. And then the generalists. While working out generalists, conversational implicators, no special background knowledge of the context of utterance is required in order to make the necessary inference. And then we are going to talk about generalized conversational implicators. The first is indefinite. We usually find the phrases with indefinites a and an, and it includes indefinite generalized conversational implicators. And then the second is scalar. Scalar implicatures are given rise by the use of certain scales value. The use of one expression indicates one point on the scale and cancels the other expression indicating higher points on the scale. Okay, the example of scales of value, they are all, most, some, few, always, often, sometimes, certain, probable, possible, to badly, progress, to will, and etc. Okay, for example, some of the boys went to the party. Some means not all the boys went to the party. Okay, that is example of scalar implicatures. And then the next, we are going to talk about the second implicatures. The name is conventional implicatures. Conventional implicatures are associated with specific words and result in additional conveyed meanings when those words are used. Okay, for example, John is poor but happy. Okay, in contrast to what John should feel as a poor person, he is happy. P but key. P is in contrast to key. Okay, John is poor as P and happy as key.
Hello, my name is Rahwanti and I will continue about the conventional implicature. In other contexts, a conventional implicature may be exploited. The most frequently created instance of this exploitation is the English word but. Even though psychologically speaking, the failure of but in conjoining two phrases or sentences is the same as that of and. And the next material is pragmatic presupposition in culture. Presupposition are implications that are often felt to be in the background, to be assumed by the speaker, to be already known to the addressees. To shed some light on the pragmatic presupposition, there are hidden beneath the surface of our cultural furnish. One has to look for those places where the furnish crack and the underlying substance become visible. And I have an example of presupposition pragmatic in culture. There's a conversation. There's a tourist and attendant. Tourist said, "Is there a toilet here?" And the attendant said, "Well, you want to use?" And the tourist again said, "Sure, I do." And attendant said, "Go down to the step. Look the conversation. Clearly, the tourist didn't ask the question because he was conducting a comparative study of toilet west and east or some such thing. And the back answer you want to use is highly unexpected. And the pragmatic presupposition in Japanese culture are clearly different, which is why it made sense for the attendant to ask the question. Okay, that is all our material and from our group. And thank you.